want to focus on this passage by looking primarily at the disciples and what Jesus, I guess, literally does, but moving to, I guess, more metaphorical things. As Gordon said, this is really the beginning. See, a leader needs a team. Jesus, as that leader, has his direction, he has his method, he knows where he wants to go and how he's going to get there. But now he needs those who would help him achieve it, help him get there, and in a sense continue it to the end and bring some sense of completion to his goal. As I was writing that, I was thinking, well, Jesus didn't really need the disciples to help him get there. He was going to get there anyhow. But then I thought, well, hang on. No, Jesus did need the disciples. Because if it wasn't for the disciples, who was going to spread this? Who was going to continue this? Jesus' end wasn't his crucifixion, was it? We might say, well, that was the end of his earthly life. But that wasn't his goal. His goal was bigger than that. His goal was salvation for everyone. And that goal certainly needed a team. And I was encouraged by that. That even Jesus Christ needed a group of people around him to help him get there. None of us is so fantastic that we could do without a team like that to support us. And I was both surprised and pleased at that thought. Firstly, let's look at these disciples and let's look at what they were. Well, they were simple folk. They weren't from schools or colleges. They weren't from the ecclesiastics or the aristocracy. That Jesus chose his team. And you might say, oh, yeah, of course. But you would have thought if he was going to start a religious movement, if he was going to, get people back on track, wouldn't you logically have gone to pick a team of, people entering into priesthood? People who were already showing that they had the gifts and graces for that kind of ministry. Wouldn't that be where you'd go? I think that would be fairly logical. But he doesn't go there. He doesn't go to the really affluent and wealthy. He goes to a group of very ordinary people. They were fishermen. They were not particularly learned, and they weren't particularly wealthy. I have to say too, they weren't particularly poor either. If Jesus was going to take these young men from a family business, it couldn't be such that if he was to rip them out, the family business would collapse and the family would, be destitute because there was no main labourer there. I don't believe Jesus would have done that. So, to my mind, these people are somewhere just in the middle. Their families that surrounded them were able to cope with them being away and becoming a student, if you like, maybe not full-time, but darn near it. These were ordinary people, and Jesus believed in ordinary people. It's no small task that he was hoping to achieve, yet he picked just ordinary people to do it. George Bernard Shaw has been quoted as saying, "I never had any feeling for the working classes except a desire to abolish them and replace them by sensible people." However, Abraham Lincoln has said, "God must have loved ordinary people. He made so many of them." I think Abraham Lincoln has the better end of the stick and knows God's heart a little better. Jesus seems to have said, in choosing his team, he seems to have been making this sort of a statement: give me a dozen ordinary blokes prepared to commit themselves to me and to this task, and I will change the world. That's how I read it anyhow. Now let's look at what they were doing. When Jesus called them, when he came by the lake and he called them to follow him, they were doing a day's work. They were just catching fish, mending their nets. Which is no huge revelation particularly, except for this: it's just the same as with many of the prophets. I am no prophet, said Amos, nor a prophet's son, but I'm a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore trees, and the Lord took me from following the flock. The Lord calls people. Jesus comes and calls these men in the middle of an ordinary day, just doing their work. But the message is, follow me. Like to Amos, the message was, go and prophesy to my people Israel. God's call comes in the middle of a day's work. Not at the end of, some massive prayer ritual, some perfect service of worship. God's call comes in ordinary things. That too is a little surprising. Let's reflect on how he called them. Follow me. Now, I don't think this was the first time that the disciples had actually met Jesus. We're not told they met him earlier, I'll grant you that. But I guess in my imagination, when it tells us that Jesus was there proclaiming the good news, telling people that the kingdom had come near, and asking them to repent and to believe in this good news, I imagine that sort of includes these guys. That other people were hearing it, crowds of people, that Jesus might have been doing this for some time, telling people his message, and that at the end of one of those sessions, and talking and chatting, the crowd drifts away, but there are a few who stay behind. A few who are sort of captivated by the message and by the person Jesus, and want to ask more, and they have questions, and they stay longer, and they talk more in depth. And it's to those people Jesus now comes and says, you guys, will you follow me? Jesus didn't say to them, however, now look, I've got a theological system which I would like you to investigate. I have some certain theories that I would like you to think over. Or, I have an ethical system I'd like to discuss with you. None of those things. Jesus simply comes and says, follow me. He might have even said, will you follow me? The Bible tells us it was as simple as that. Follow me. Put your feet in my footsteps and let's go. It all began with a personal reaction to himself. And I believe in this sense of, I guess, their heartstrings being tugged by the person that they've come to know or heard and thought, yes, that's what I'm looking for. That's the person that I want to follow. He's going where I want to go, and he's the kind of person I want to become. That is that kind of a heart response to Jesus, to the person, more so than, maybe the specific words he'd said. That's not to say that people don't think their way into Christianity, because they do. But the way I read these guys, I guess the way I've come to Jesus is more about that heart response. It's the encounter that is a personal one, where my heart says, yes, perhaps more so than my head says, hey, this is a very logical, good idea. Maybe you're a bit the same. But I see that's how it worked for these disciples. It was a heart-led response that becomes an unshakable loyalty to the person that leads them through the next few years and the difficult patches. I think most people find that it's a heart thing. It has been said that it's more like falling in love. Somebody has written, we admire people for reasons, but we love them without reasons. And I guess coming to Jesus, following Jesus, giving your life to him is something a little bit like that. It's not so much because you sit down and say, yes, this is the most logical thing, but it's because your heart says, I want to follow this person. I want to go where they are, where they're going. And I'm going to tie myself to them. It's that level of commitment that Jesus is calling for. Finally, let's look at what Jesus was offering these people. He said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. He offered them a task. He called them not to ease, not to a life of, sort of sitting around doing nothing and putting your feet up and this will be, a bed of roses. He never said that. He said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. He gives them a task and calls them to a service. I believe that it's one of our great human needs, great human quests, if you like, that we would find something to invest ourselves in. We would find something that we can pour our hearts and our souls and our minds into and let it captivate us. I think we do it in so many ways. I've been thinking about, I guess, a very practical way of doing that in terms of a home. Now, Astrid and I, we wanted to have a family home and we wanted that to be something we could pour our hearts and our minds and our energy, our passion into. And in a sense, we chose a house that needed quite a bit of repair and doing up. And the pouring of ourselves into it was in fixing and doing and changing and remaking, quite literally. But maybe you're the kind of person who would buy a completely perfect finished house, but for you it would be in decorating it, in making it reflect you and your style. That's where you start to pour yourself into it. Perhaps more so than the physical building and remaking of it. And I think we're the same in our work. We're the same in the other things we do, whether it's a garden or our hobbies. We are looking for and we long for a task that we can invest ourselves in, pour ourselves into, heart and mind and body, and know that that investment is something good and is turning into something fantastic, something that we might dream of. And Jesus gives these men that sort of a task. And he's really calling them and saying, invest yourself in this. Don't just believe it with your head, but I'm asking you to invest in it with your heart, your imagination, your soul, with your strength, with everything you have, with all of your time and with all of your money. I'm asking you to invest into this venture. Follow me. he says. And I will make you fishers of men. And what we see them doing is exactly that. Pouring their whole lives into it. All of their energy, all of their time. The deeper he goes, the more committed that they are to him. Such that Thomas would say, when he seems to want to go into the cauldron of fire and to certain death, Thomas says, well, let us go and die with him. You know, the movies are full of great lines, none better than that. You know, well, if the leader's going to go down in flames, let's all go with him. Charge, you know, waving swords and rattling shields. That's what we love in those sort of battle-type action movies, isn't it? It's that speech where everybody says, we are with you to the end of our lives, with everything we have. And if we don't make it out, we don't care because we want to be right at your side. And the disciples are doing that very thing. But at this point, it's only the beginning. Jesus says, follow me, and they follow. But what he gives them is something they then invest their whole lives in. And he gives the same task to us. He gives the same call to us. He stands and says, in the middle of our ordinary days, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. He calls you to follow not just with your head, but to invest yourselves in it. He calls you to be those kind of people who are rallied alongside him and say, I want to be at your side. And where you go, I will go, and nothing will prevent me doing that. Nothing will prevent me from going where you are going and being the kind of person that you are. I'm going to be like that. Where you put your feet, I will put my feet. That's what he calls us to. To love the task. To love this journey because we love him. I wanted to issue you a challenge for this new year. And in some ways it's fairly simple. And it's about this kind of commitment that we might make to Jesus. I'm going to ask you to just spend a moment and think of the people around you, the team that you need to get you there. The team of people that you need this year to get you standing there committed alongside of Jesus. Who will encourage you? Who will pick you up and carry you through difficult times? Who will help you stay focused on being that person? Who is your team? I just want you to close your eyes and sit quietly. If they don't come to you immediately, that's okay. Ask Jesus to just reveal some names. Maybe think through and imagine who they might be. But if you're that kind of person, I want you to see it. Not just a list of names. I want you to see what it might look like. Surrounded by your team and getting there. Being encouraged. So just take these next few moments.